This episode is sponsored by Phrase Flowers, a Western New York family-run flower farm and floral preservationist. They offer unique and one-of-a-kind pressed flowers in the shape of buffaloes. Every buffalo is handcrafted, and because they are made with flowers, each one has their own look and personality.
You can get a hold of them on their website at phraseflowers.com. That's Frase flowers.com. Or check them out on Facebook and Instagram. Bring more joy and color into your life at Phrase Flowers. No relation to Chase Phrase.
What's up, everyone, and welcome into the Buffalo Sports Collective. It is Friday, February 7th, 2023. As always, I'm PK alongside my co-host, Phil. Episode 332. I don't know if you heard right in the beginning here. Giant gust of wind just hit my window. I don't know if it was a branch. I don't know if it was just the wind. It's big wind out here. We were talking right before we hit record. There are so many trees around my property that in the back field, we got close to 11 acres, and like 10 and a half of them are in the back, and it's a cleared field. But in the half an acre around my house, there's trees galore, and there's just branches everywhere. So if I have to leave mid-podcast, it's probably because a branch fell through one of the windows in the house. So I'll have to go deal with that. But Phil, how are you? How's it going over there?
It's also windy. I don't know. I mean, we got a lot of trees in the area, but I don't think too many have fallen or anything like that. The ice has been annoying. Very icy, obviously, for pretty much everybody. I did go home, or when I got home, I used an ice scraper to clear out in front of my door, and then a few hours later, it was like coated over again somehow with ice, and I was like, what just happened? I was very confused because nothing had come from the sky. I didn't even know it was cold enough to refreeze what was left. I got it down all the way to the pavement, so I'm not sure how it came up with a whole new sheet of ice, but it's better than it was. Still very icy. Everybody be careful. Ice, wind, not a good combination.
Yeah, I wasn't ready for rain this morning. I was getting wet going out to my car, and then I realized, oh, it's my ice. The truck's covered in ice, and I was almost late to work because I was not prepared for this. I should have checked the weather before. But this has been the weather segment of this show. We got a jam-packed show, so we're going to dive in. And remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Buffalo Sports Collective, and on X and Blue Sky at Buffalo Sports Co. Don't forget to follow our channel wherever you listen to podcasts. You can check out our beautiful faces and the fun commentary that we do with our hands and faces and expressions on YouTube. Go check them out because we have the video version there. Check out our website at buffalosportscollective.com. Phil's article dropped on Tuesday. My article dropped on Thursday. Give both of those a read. You can check out our store on our link tree on our social media sites or atop the website by hitting the shop tab. You can represent the BSC on the go. We literally have everything you could want on the store. And look for the time breakdowns in the description of the show. It is that time. It's the fun time. That's why I'm wearing my little bow tie here. For the BSC Bills Nominees, fourth season doing this, fourth season concluded of covering this team. Disappointment once again, but we're not looking past that. We're here to celebrate the season that
we are
was.
looking past that.
Yeah, we are. Did I say we're not looking past that?
You said we're not looking past it.
We are. We're looking past the disappointment, and we're focusing on the positivity here. We changed up some awards. We got rid of two. One was the most memorable moment because you and I always have the most time, the most difficult time trying to remember moments that happened through the season. So I got rid of that, and then we got rid of the most disappointing player because I only want to celebrate this team this year because they accomplished a lot more than we both thought they would. Don't listen to that episode, Phil. We look like idiots. But we got 7 awards to go through. Today is just the nominees. Monday's episode, we will crown the victors in the most coveted award in sports and entertainment history. Players cry when they get nominated and do not win. Players cry even more when they're not even nominated. So, Phil, we'll start with the MVP. We got 4 nominees this year. Last year's winner was a bit controversial, but guess what? Don't care. It's our show. Suck a duck. this year's MVP nominees. I made myself laugh on that one. Josh Allen, James Cook, Khalil Shakir, and Deion Dawkins. If you can tell a theme with this, the offense came to play. And I think a lot of it has to do with our expectations were exceeded by this team this year.
And injuries to the defensive all-stars.
That's also true.
Doesn't help. Yeah, I mean, it's honestly, it seems easy. And this award is tough. We were just discussing it with a later segment that we'll talk about. But it's extremely difficult for this award. And it's monotonous. I know last year we picked someone else, which is interesting because the last year winner, Sean McDermott, arguably had a better year coaching this year, and he's not even an option, but he's also a defensive-minded coach, so not really a huge part of the offense. But Josh Allen is very hard to argue against with this, and even for his own NFL MVP run he's going on, not as prestigious as winning the BSC MVP, but
not even close.
It is what it
There's
is.
a reason he didn't even show up last year to the honors because he wasn't even nominated there. There's a reason for it, Phil. There's a reason.
And he stepped up. He didn't appreciate not being part of it, and he changed things. But yeah, it's very hard to go against Josh Allen. I mean, without him, the Bills, I mean, we said it tons and tons of times throughout the entire year. Even when looking at backup QBs, for example, and like, oh, who would be good to back up Allen? Like, can they get someone a little bit more prominent? Like, it doesn't matter. Like, if you lose Allen, you lose the team. It is what it is. James Cook did amazing. Shakir had a very, very good season. Deion Dawkins keeping Josh Allen standing and healthy. Very, very big part of this team, but it's very difficult not to look Allen's way, even though the other three did have great seasons.
Yeah, I think, I mean, to counteract your point there,
Here we go.
Right before we hit record, you said a certain quarterback on the Buffalo Bills had a better QBR than Josh Allen. So is Josh Allen truly the MVP of this team?
Trubisky.
But yeah, I think he would be the front runner here. I think James Cook would be right behind him because I do think, and we did see one game without James Cook, Ray Davis kind of came in and excelled. So that kind of hurt James Cook's, not chances to win this, but it did hurt his perception of, are you the true MVP if a rookie backup comes in and does just as well as the starter did. And that week I still remember coming on here and going, hey, maybe this is me saying I don't think they should sign James Cook because you're not supposed to pay running backs, and that blew up in my face. But yeah, between Cook, Shakir, and Dawkins is definitely one that's not going to be talked about enough, but I think he has continued to get better and better each season, which is shocking because I think this is his eighth or ninth season. He's just one of, if not the best left tackle in the league. It's just impressive coming into the NFL. There were people that were saying that he could not be a left tackle in this league, and that's on tape. I've made dumb statements before. You just got to own it. But yeah, even Spencer Brown might have been in contention here. We'll talk about him in a second. But yeah, I think these are the four most deserving of being nominated for the MVP. And we'll come to find out on Monday who really leads the charge. But we'll be talking about all these guys again in just a second here. So we'll move on to the Offensive Player of the Year. Last year, Josh Allen took it home. Josh Allen is nominated this year along with James Cook, Khalil Shakir, Matt Collins, Ty Johnson, Deion Dawkins, and Spencer Brown. A lot of nominees for Offensive Player of the Year, and I think, honestly, all of these players are up there. I think there's different tiers on where you can rank them, but I definitely think that all of these players made big-time statements for the offensive side of the ball this season in the NFL for the Buffalo Bills.
It also depends a lot on the play calling and situations. Like, it's hard. Yes, it's for the whole year. But you can also say, like, had this player been featured more, maybe they would have had an even more prolific season, and it's not necessarily their fault. But what they were able and allowed to do, we'll put it that way, yes, they excelled at. Like Ty Johnson, for example, didn't have a ton of opportunities, but the opportunities he was given, he did very well, so that's why he's on this list. James Cook going from 2 touchdowns to 16 touchdowns. Again, yes, big part of it is play calling and how they were using him, but at the same time, even if you call the play, he still has to execute that play and make it happen and go into the end zone, whether it be a long breakoff run, which he had multiples of this year, or a short area touchdown. You still have to find a way into the end zone, and he did that way more than he has in the past, and also way more than, not way more, but more than Allen this year, which I feel like hasn't been the case for a rusher for the Bills in a long time. Allen usually takes home the rushing touchdown lead. Mac Hollins had a very good season. I think he was, even still now, kind of underrated, especially because I think when he was brought in, it was kind of not, this is going to sound mean, not a joke. Obviously, he was here for a reason, but he wasn't supposed to be really highlighted or featured at all in the offense, and he ended up coming up with huge plays multiple times throughout the year. And like you mentioned a few times, because of the expectations of him that I just mentioned not being very high, he was and arguably is a better Gabe Davis because he was brought in to be a big blocking wide receiver that can sometimes catch the ball, and he excelled at that. And Gabe Davis was brought in to be a number 2 wide receiver with way too much pressure, way too high of expectations, and failed at those expectations miserably because it's just not, he's not good enough to meet those expectations. They were too high for him. I already talked about Ty Johnson, and like you said, Deion Dawkins, Spencer Brown, keeping Josh Allen up. I feel like it's hard for people who aren't dialing into the game analytically all the time and reviewing tape to really look at offensive linemen and be like, oh, these guys are clearly difference makers. But I think with the lack of sacks they took this year, and I know some of that's Allen scrambling, some of that's Allen throwing it away, running for his life, making sure he stays up. He's not really a pocket guy, but a lot of it was the team finally gave him time. The offensive line gave him time to make good decisions, make throws, or even if they needed to, they bought him time to escape the pocket and do what he does best. So I do think the least amount of sacks in the entire league, I believe, by, I don't know by the number, but I feel like a decent amount. I think that obviously goes a lot toward Dawkins and Brown.
Yeah, I think you summed up the tackles very well. I think they're one of the best duos of tackles in the league, and Buffalo's locked in with them for years to come. Ty Johnson, you said it perfectly, in his limited amount of time, he excelled, and I would be very much on board to bring him back the next year. He's one of the very few UFAs on this team. Mac Hollins, I think I gave him too much hassle earlier in the season when it wasn't really his fault he was on the outside playing as many snaps as he was, because the offense just didn't have the offensive talent on the outside. He was one of the very few players that stepped up in the playoffs versus the Chiefs and made those big-time catches. Shakir stepped up his game. I think he has another level that we might see next year. I do think he could be a 80 to 85 catch guy over 1,000 yards. I don't think you're ever going to get a ton of touchdowns by him, but he's a pinball. And then we really already talked about Josh Allen and James Cook, so I don't really have to dive into that. But all these guys very deserving of Offensive Player of the Year. And stay tuned Monday for when we crown a new or back-to-back Offensive Player of the Year. We'll move on to Defensive Player of the Year. Last year's winner, Taron Johnson. This year's nominees, Terrell Bernard, Taylor Rapp, Taron Johnson, Ed Oliver, Christian Benford, and Gregory Rousseau. Phil, again, this one is going to be a very tough fight. I think this one's likely the toughest battle so far of the awards, of trying to hand one out to a victor.
I think my math I just tried to do was horrible. Yeah, this one, it's especially tough and interesting because a lot of these players went down, and when they went down, you noticed a difference in the defense. And I think that makes it really complicated to choose just one, because it's similar to the MVP, right? But of the defense, like, who is your most valuable defensive player? And each one of them, kind of, not all of them, but a lot of them had injuries, and when they were missing, you're like, okay, we really need that player back on the field. And it happened to multiples of them, and they were kind of all needed back on the field. So I don't know if any of them truly are far and away better than the rest, but like you said, it makes it a very difficult and tough decision because all of them kind of shined in their own ways and in their own moments. Bernard obviously had a really good season. Got injured, didn't play the full season, but when he was in, he was important. Rapp, you saw the difference he made when he was missing. Taron Johnson continues to be one of the best slot corners and coverage men in the entire league. Ed Oliver and Greg Rousseau, very similar to Deion Dawkins and Spencer Brown, made a lot of havoc on that defensive line. And when you have the defensive line working and causing pressure, it makes the entire defense much better. If the QB can't just sit back there and do whatever he wants, it makes the entire defense a lot better. And then Benford, you saw again when he went down. Oh my goodness. I don't know. I don't know if it's more of a depth on the team with Elam. Poor guy. We pick on him a lot, but it's sadly deserving. But he was also very missed in the playoff game when he went down. His injury was scary, knowing that he had a concussion going in and then immediately got a concussion again and didn't look right. But again, another really, really big player. Right now, he is he's their best corner, and I think it's arguable they only have one good corner on the team, and luckily he's really good, and he is it. But they're going to need some corner help, and again, similar to all the rest of them, kind of shows why each one of them is very important to the defense in their own way. They all play a little bit different position, but they all mean a lot to this defense.
Yeah, between Bernard, Benford, Rapp, and Johnson, you said it. When they got injured, it was a noticeable drop-off with who came in to replace them. No shot at the players that did come in to replace them. It's just those guys are starters for a reason. So, right. Especially in the playoffs versus Kansas City, you saw the massive gap between Benford and Elam. So, I do think that in one strange way, getting injured did help them in trying to win the most coveted award in sports and entertainment history. This is the BSC Award. So we'll move on. We'll, again, crown a new victor or a repeat victor on the next show. Rookie of the Year. This one can't be repeated because you're only a rookie once. Sorry, that's been in my throat for a second.
He could go back to his rookie year.
I think he does also. But, yeah, last year's winner, Dalton Kincaid. Phil, can you name the nominees?
Rookie of the Year nominees: Keon Coleman, Ray Davis, Joe Andreessen, Cole Bishop, and Brandon Codrington. Am I carrying on, or are you coming back?
I'm back. Okay. There was a frog in my throat. Not
wearing a frog shirt.
I know, that's why I said it. But yeah, Keon Coleman, I think he came in with expectations of it was going to take him a minute to warm up to the league just based on the type of wide receiver he was. Joe Andreessen coming in being a special teamer. He came in, and I believe he even started a game, if I remember correctly.
I believe so.
Cole Bishop came in the playoffs. I thought he handled himself very well in replacement of Taylor Rapp. I don't think he was Taylor Rapp, but I think he held his own. He was not one of the reasons. He was one of the standouts to me. Brandon Codrington coming over from the Jets for a 7th-round pick. I think he was one of the best return men in the league. I think he was voted All-Pro, if I remember correctly. And then Ray Davis. We talked about him for a second when James Cook was out. But not just that, but in his limited role behind both Ty Johnson and James Cook, I thought he played very well. So I think all 5 of these guys are up for nominations. I wish Dwayne Carter would have not gotten hurt, because I thought before he got hurt, he was playing some of the best defensive tackle on this team right behind Ed Oliver. So I'll be looking towards him next year to see what type of steps he takes. But I do think there are a good number of rookies that had solid seasons, but ones that I think you were expecting more from Keon Coleman than he delivered. But I think getting injured and coming back did hamper him. He just was not the same wide receiver when he came back.
Yeah, I think Bishop, to his downfall a little bit in this award, is that he just wasn't out there a lot. When he was out there, like you said, especially in playoffs, I mean, a part of this is kind of what you said for the most memorable moment is usually we just remember playoffs and the end of the year, which is why we got rid of that award, because it's really hard to remember all of them throughout the whole season. But very similar. I mean, it kind of credits Bishop because you remember him in that playoff game playing really well. So to see his development throughout the whole year, and now I think in that playoff game, high pressure situation, not being one that, like, when you think of that game, you think of Elam not doing very well. You don't think of Bishop and how poorly he did. He was invisible in a good way for the defense, and I think that will help the Bills moving forward kind of figure out where they are with Cole Bishop and how he is as a player for next season. But I think you said most of it right. Keon Coleman might have fallen. I think the hardest thing with Keon Coleman, and this is nothing to do with him.
It's the other wide receivers that were drafted around him.
The other wide receivers that were in his class, and it's not his fault. He can't do anything about it. He was drafted where he was drafted. The Bills took him because the Bills wanted him. It's nothing he can do about it. But the rest of the wide receiver class that exploded this year as rookies, it just puts a negative light on Coleman's season.
That's why we're big time hoping. I was on Talking Buffalo, recorded Thursday. It's going to be out today, the same time as this episode is dropping. So go listen to that. After you listen to ours. After you listen to ours, go listen to Talking Buffalo. But yeah, we mentioned it. We're really hoping that Worthy has like a goose egg, because if he goes for like 8 for $120 and a touchdown, the offseason's going to be nonstop around here, because you know how well Buffalo reacts to Kansas City and the draft picks that were traded to them. But yeah, we'll talk about and crown the Rookie of the Year on our next show. But before we dive into the final 3 awards, we're going to go over our first sponsor of the show, Tap That Taproom.
Tap That Taproom's at 363 Delaware Street in Tonawanda, New York. They are Buffalo's first women-owned self-pour bar. They feature 30 consistently rotating taps, offering a variety of sour ciders, seltzers, beer, and malt beverages.
I'm going to have to change that because they're actually our second sponsor of the show. We had an intro
first
right
sponsor,
at the beginning. First sponsor of the show part. We're gonna have to change the wording on that one. Yeah, if you listen to the beginning, we had a sponsor there, and we got a sponsor right here. Tap That Taproom. Friday, the 7th, 3 to 7 is happy hour. Every Friday at Tap That Taproom is happy hour. It's the best place to go after work to try new drinks. Phil just listed all the different varieties that they have. If you're interested in trying a new beer and you don't want to go to Premier, you don't want to go to any of the other beer places around, a shopping mall or a store, grocery store, doesn't matter. You don't want to pay the $12, $13, $14 to try a drink. Go to Tap That Taproom, because the entire beer wall is discounted from 3 to 7. It's the best place to go. Not just the best place to go, but the best place to go to try new drinks, because they are discounted. And then Saturday, 4 p.m., Paint Night with Mary, which it's the afternoon, guys. I don't know why they always say Paint Night when it's 4 p.m., but Mary's in town painting gnomes. Tickets are still available, but there are very few left. With that ticket, you get paint supplies. So it's all wrapped into one. I love gnomes. I have a bunch over there. You can't really see them. They're out of frame. But yeah, paint night, paint gnomes. It's going to be a great time. Go there for the discounted drinks on Friday, and then head back over Saturday to paint some gnomes with Mary, to check out what else they got coming up, because they got a ton of stuff coming up in February. Check out their Facebook page and find out what's on tap and what's on deck. Check out tapthattaproom.com. Next award, Most Improved Player. This one's always my favorite, because it seems like no matter what BSC award show we do, the players that we want and the players that sometimes we call out in the BSC challenge end up being a nominee for the Most Improved Player. So just, a nice pat on the back for us. Last year's winner was Terrell Bernard. This year's, and he is now a nominee for Defensive Player of the Year. Not saying, just saying. Most Improved Player nominees, we got 5 here: Dorian Williams, Connor McGovern, Tyler Bass, David Edwards, and James Cook. I think each one is on this list for a different reason. I think people are like, Tyler Bass, what the heck? Go check out what he did like the second half of the season in the playoffs. He was much better than the beginning. A lot of people were counting him off, and you and I were on the show like, hey, yeah, he's struggling, but there's no one else out there. Like, the free agent market is barren unless you're going to trade for a kicker, and that almost never happened. Dorian Williams came in a pinch. I think he was, to put it lightly, he was terrible last year in his rookie year. We were saying it's a wasted draft pick of a third-round pick, and he was terrible. And he comes in and fills in for Matt Milano. And although he's not Matt Milano, he is one of the hardest hitters on this team. He was unbelievable. Connor McGovern sliding over from left guard to center. I mean, I was a little bit worried on that one for a guy who's never played center. They're just going like, hey, we're just going to push him over to center. This was their plan the whole time, and didn't really miss a pinch. David Edwards going from the swing tackle to starting left guard, again, didn't really miss a beat. So 2 offensive linemen there that switched positions from last year and just were great. And then James Cook, you already listed it. He's up for 3 awards here for a big reason, going from 2 touchdowns last year to 16, but not just that, being one of the focal points of that offense. I think all 5 of these guys are well deserving for most improved player.
Yeah, Tyler Bass did look it up. He was 6 for 6 in the postseason.
Nailed
2
that
of 2
51-yarder
from 50 plus 7 of 7 for extra points as well. I don't know if that is. I think that's wrong. I think 25 extra points.
Not in the playoffs, man. You got to be right with 7 and 7. Yeah,
7 of 7. Well, the long. I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, I think he was very. Not only written off, we were challenging him as well, but I feel like when he had that 51-yarder in playoffs, no one cared for some reason. Like, everything was just so focused on you beat the Ravens. It was a big win. It was a close win. I think because of the way the win ended up going out, it was just awkward and weird how they were running the clock out, but it was really nervous and tense, and it wasn't an end-of-the-game field goal that won it. But without that field goal, you don't win, and I feel like he wasn't talked about at all after that game, so I do think he deserves, like you said, I looked it up. He had the exact same stats as last year. He was 24-29 in both this year and last year, but the second half and playoffs, he was much better this season. So you got to remember how he finished, not necessarily where he came from. Dorian Williams, you and I were kind of negative on him, not only last year, but even when he was asked to step up to be the starting lineup. Before he actually went out there and did it, we were like, all right, this is going to be horrible. And again, we said it a million times. It's not that he's a bad player. It's that he's not a linebacker 1 on a team. But when he had to step into that position, he did a pretty good job. And I do still think that he's a linebacker 2, but he stepped up a ton, ended up leading the team, mainly due to injury, but he did end up leading the team in tackles. So I think he had a huge boost to his own stock. He did a good job, like you already mentioned, and we've mentioned 100 times now with the offensive line being amazing. I think Connor McGovern, like you said, is a huge one because just shifting someone to center is arguably the most important and toughest spot on the line. Not only snapping, but then you're immediately protecting your QB. And he did great. I mean, stepping in for the veteran Mitch Morris, who has been here for a while, was with Allen for a while, obviously, and that was a really tough position to step into and step up, and I think he did a really nice job.
So we'll move on to the 6th award here, Best Offensive Signing / Late Season Addition. Last year's winner, Rasul Douglas. This year's nominees, Brandon Codrington. Yes, he was an addition. Remember, they traded for him. They did not draft him. That's why he's here. Murray Cooper, Curtis Samuel, Matt Collins, and Dwayne Smoot. Phil, we're already about like 29 minutes in. We'll wrap up these ones a little bit quicker. But, yeah, I think each one
depressing.
Besides Codrington and Collins, I think this is a 2-horse race right now. I think Cooper comes in. Cooper come in. He was hurt, so if you want to play that factor, whatever. I just don't think he was really doing much before that.
At all.
Not used. Rarely on the field. That's why I really don't want them to re-sign him. I think they need more speed than what he's there to offer. Not a bad wide receiver. Still think he's got a lot of football left to play. I think it's going to be elsewhere. Curtis Samuel, very underwhelming considering how much they paid. He was their first free agent signing. Paid him a good amount of money and kind of was, besides that one big catch, kind of non-existent. Smoot, good rotational player, but I think Codrington and, to me, Hollins had the most impact for the free agents / late season additions. So to me, it's down to those two.
James Cook did play 2 more games, but him and Samuel had pretty much identical receiving stats, and that's not great when your running back is right there with you with a wide receiver you brought in to be a focal point of your offense and a big wide receiver for this team. There was a lot of hype around him to start, and nothing. Cooper, same thing. There was a lot of hype even for my fantasy team. I was like, all right, let's go.
I should have traded him.
Away from Cleveland. Here we go. He's going to take off because he was doing well in Cleveland. Like, he had games in Cleveland where he was getting like 20 targets, but he was getting over 100 yards and had a big game. And then he came to Buffalo, and they were like, how would you like 1, maybe 2 targets a game, possibly behind the line of scrimmage? That sound good? Sounds great. You. But yeah, I think Codrington and Hollins are both really good additions to this team. I hope they both come back next year. Hollins is a strange dude, but he owns it. He owns it well, and I loved his And a lot of it comes from the blocking, but for a guy who is not a huge impact player on the team, every time he catches the ball, he is just yelling at the defense. And I love it. I love how much attitude he has for a guy who catches like the ball like once a game. But that one catch, he makes sure that cornerback, whoever's covering him, knows they weren't good enough to cover Matt Collins. And I think it's hilarious. But hope he comes back. He was good. We'll move on.
We'll move on to the final award here, the BSC Challenge. This is us challenging one of these players to step up their game, to have higher expectations. It's kind of whatever we really feel the BSC Challenge is. Last year's winner, Khalil Shakir, and he definitely did step up and conquer our challenge. This year's nominees, we got 4 of them: Keon Coleman, Cole Bishop, Gregory Rousseau, and Dalton Kincaid. I think each one of them is on this list for an important reason. They all have to step up their game next year because they're all going to have very important roles on this team and very important. If this team is going to get over the edge, all of these 4 players need to step up their game and accept this BSC Challenge, whether you win it or not.
Yeah, 2 defense, 2 offense. I think the offense are obvious. The team is still missing and looking for anyone for Josh to go to on a more consistent basis other than Shakir. Shakir was amazing, but he has, I don't want to say a limited role, but he's not your prototypical wide receiver 1.
He's not the alpha.
Right. He's your slot guy. He's a fantastic wide receiver 2. Really, really good wide receiver. Exciting to see where his career goes, but he's not the alpha. They need Coleman to step up, be that perimeter guy. They need Dalton Kincaid to step up and be a guy. It'd be nice to see him just catch anything more than he did. He just wasn't very good or impactful. I mean, we had him on as one of the challenges to be a great player for this team. Everyone had really high hopes for Kincaid and this season, and there were just nothing. Rousseau, I thought he had a good year, continues to get better, but like you said, needs to continue to push himself and his talent get a little bit better. And then Cole Bishop, we saw what he can do in the playoff game, and if he can continue to grow. They always kind of knew he was going to be a project as well. He wasn't supposed to be ready this year. If he did, it would be at the end of the year. He showed what he could do, so hopefully he can kind of roll that on and keep building his career.
So all these award winners will be announced on our Monday show, the most coveted award in Buffalo and sports and entertainment history around the world. So you definitely want to win this. It's going to be very sad for those that do not win it. Go send get well cards to the losers.
I expect if Allen wins our MVP and he doesn't win the NFL, I expect him to tweet it out like, "Well, I got the better award."
Once
anyways.
the award gets in there, he's definitely going to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
if he does,
producer Pat made a nice graphic. It'll be on our social media sites, so you can let us know who we missed off these nominees and who you think is going to win it on our social media sites all over. We'll move on to the Buffalo Sabres here. 4-game winning streak. Tuesday versus Columbus, 3-2 victory. Byram and Tuck had 2. Reimer started 27-29 save. Shots were 29-21 in favor of Columbus. Buffalo 0 for 1 on the power play, but they're sitting 22, 26, and 5. They're 11 points out of a wild card as of that recording. The team is 11-7-1 since that 13-game losing streak, their first 4-game winning streak since January of 2023. The team held a players-only meeting to discuss the lack of response. There were claims that it would never happen again, even though this organization claims that all the time. It's not acceptable, blah, 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 we'll learn, be better, whatever. Gilbert fights 3 seconds into a game. They all claim this was not scripted, but la-di-da, whatever. To me, I don't want to talk about this. I want to talk about the cap. The cap is likely to go up. It's projected to go up over the next 3 years. These are all projections. Projected to go to 95.1 next year. The lower end is 70.6. The following year, 104. Low end, 76.9. Following year, so 3 years from now, 113.5. Lower end, 83.9. And when I keep mentioning the lower end, the teams have to spend to that lower end of the cap. So for the Sabres, next year alone, they have $33.7 million in cap space. They have to spend 8.83. Now, they got some RFAs that they do need to sign, so they're easily going to be able to reach that cap floor. But it's the 2 years after that is what I'm talking about. In 26-27, they got $54 million in cap space. $26.94 million has to be spent to reach the floor. The following year, 27-28, $68.4 million in cap space. They need to spend $38.83 to reach the cap floor. Now, they can do it. I'm not saying that. But this is another reason, and I'm not saying they're in the basement because of this, but this is another reason why I said it was stupid to get rid of Jeff Skinner, regardless of his defensive play, because he was so good offensively. Now, in this stretch of games, they have not been struggling to score goals. But you got rid of the Jeff Skinner contract. You did it the way they did it to save money. You had to have known some idea that the cap was going to go up. Maybe not to this extent, but you're kind of just wasting away now. They have all these contracts. Tage Thompson's contract looks delicious. Dahlin's looks delicious. You got Samuelson. Please trade him for a bag of pucks at this point. Cousins, he's rumor milled all over the place, but he's making over $7 million. You really don't have to trade out these players, but a lot of the core is not playing to what they need to. But seeing how much money they're going to have, I am nervous because I think Kevin Adams is going to be in charge of spending this money because they have given me no indication whatsoever that his job's on the line. Because if it was, say you and I are in this GM position, we don't give two farts about what's happening 2 years from now, because if I don't win now, I'm not going to be around. That's why I said it in past shows, and I'm saying it again here. I feel like Kevin Adams has some reassurance that his job is safe for next year because nothing's getting done. Like, nobody's getting fired, nothing's happening. Now, I wouldn't be shocked if he does get fired, and I hope he does, because I do not want a Kevin Adams who's been on the job for 5 years, who has yet to have any sniff of the playoffs besides that 1 year where they missed it by a point, in charge of spending this money. I was in favor of a lot of these contracts, but there's a reason I'm sitting here and not over there. So it's they got a lot of money coming up, and just because of these contracts doesn't mean they're in trouble, because there's a lot of money they have to spend just to get to the cap floor.
I think that's why he's still here, because Pagula was like, "Hey, if you spend just to the cap floor, I'll keep you around. Make it look good. Make it bring in some players they're gonna hit and maybe change things and change the culture. It's gonna be exciting, get the fans excited. But if you spend anywhere above that cap floor, you're out of here."
Yeah, that makes sense. But Phil, I do have some good news. They got a game on Saturday, and then we get a long break because of the Worlds or Nations or whatever it is, the tournament of 4 teams. Worlds, whatever it is.
I don't know.
But they don't play again until the 22nd after Saturday. So
Good.
A little bit of a Sabres break, which is nice because the Bandits have 2 games next weekend. And with that, we'll move on to the Bandits section here. BSC Bandits game. If you were looking for movement in the top 10, you came to the wrong show. The top 10 did not move whatsoever. In fact, only 10 people moved up or down out of all the players that are participating. Top 10 goes as follows. Jackson B, 560 in first place. Phil, our co-host here, is in second place at 540. Tim K is in third, 507. I'm right behind him in fourth place at 504. Nick B is in fifth, 495. Brooke is in sixth. I don't know why I was going to say four. Sixth, 488. Brad D is in seventh at 485. Mike D is tied with him at 485. Stacy K is right behind at 487. And then Kim D rounds out the top 10. 454. Our highest riser was Janelle L. 3 spots up to number 11, just missing the top 10. And then producer Pat, he was one of the ones that did not move. He's holding down spot 20 in back-to-back weeks. Come on, producer Pat, play better.
That's all we have to say about that. Happy to remain in second. It's weird that with so many goals scored and just a bit of a wild game-ish that it all just kind of balanced out to be nothing.
Yeah. I think that helps when the top tier was Dane Smith and Josh Byrne, and they both walk away with pretty much identical stat lines besides goals and assists.
They're pretty good.
Yeah, they're pretty good. Pretty good. But nobody is out of it because there's 12 games left in the Buffalo Bandits season. So don't count yourself out. Remember, you can check out the standings. It is updated every Wednesday. Wednesday, guys. Wednesday. On our BSC website, buffalosportscollective.com. We'll look at the NLL Outlook because we don't have a breakdown now. NLL Outlook, only 4 games right now. Friday, 7 p.m., 5-4 Colorado takes on 5-3 Georgia. Battle of the Fives, who gets to 6 first. Friday at 10 o'clock, it's the battle of the 4-win teams. 4-3 Calgary versus the 4-4 Vancouver Warriors. It's a rematch for the earlier where Vancouver took that one. Saturday, 1 p.m. What are you doing at 1 p.m.? You're watching this game. 3-4 Halifax takes on the 5-3 Philadelphia Wings. And then the final game of the weekend, Saturday at 7 p.m., 3-5 San Diego versus the 3-5 Toronto Rock. This is one that all Buffalo Bandits fans have to watch because Buffalo faces Toronto on Friday, and it's San Diego on Saturday. So keep an eye on that matchup. But the one benefit is they're all spaced out. So if you really want to watch all 4 games, you don't have to flip-flop channels. It's perfectly spaced out for all NLL viewers.
The other bad thing for San Diego, but good for the Bandits, is that they are going to Toronto, flying all the way back to the West Coast, and then coming all the way back to Buffalo. That's got to be some annoying
those air
travel
mileage
for them. It does. It does help the air miles. I don't think San Diego is going to pull that one off, but I would like them to. Toronto is fast moving on the rise, looking really good again. Again, we talked about it a billion times. The Bandits seem to have not too big of an issue with Toronto, even though some of them have come down to 0.1 seconds in the game to win, but still, they're on quite the tear against Toronto, but Toronto is on the rise, getting very, very healthy. Halifax and Philly, I don't expect Halifax to do much in that game. Philly's been pretty solid. Halifax does have an okay offense, though, and Philly's defense and goaltending has been suspect so far. So that could just be a really high-scoring game that ends up going to possibly whoever has the ball last, Calgary and Vancouver. Vancouver's offense is boring and non-existent, but the defense is great. Calgary, still no idea. I don't know what they are. Colorado and Georgia, that should be a really good one. Again, 2 teams that are kind of bouncing back and forth between being good and being okay. I don't know. Georgia's another one, just put in a ton of goals out of nowhere, but their offense is still suspect. And then they're going up against Dylan Ward, who's been one of the better goalies all season. So that one could be how many can Georgia put past him in order to keep up with Colorado's great offense. But that, in a weird way, could be another one that's very low scoring. Both have very good defenses and very good goalies. It just depends on whose offense comes to play.
So before we dive into our final segment of the show, let's go over our third and final sponsor of the show, the Totally Buffalo Store.
The Totally Buffalo Store, their mission is to celebrate all things Buffalo with over 100 local artisans. They are your place to go when you need a gift for a friend or you just want to shop around for something for yourself. They have 3 convenient locations: 3328 Sheridan Drive in Amherst, 3459 Amelia Drive in Orchard Park, and 467 Center Street in Lewiston.
Now I'm calling all Bandits fans, lend me your ears. You ask and wonder all year long, where can you find Bandits apparel? Well, we're here to answer all your wishes, make all your wishes come true. No more need to rub that genie lamp. He will never appear. We will. Boom. The Totally Buffalo Store is a place you need to go to get all decked out to support your 2-time defending champions, from t-shirts to hoodies, Zumbas. You got mugs and more. The team is off this weekend, so head down to the Totally Buffalo Store to stock up for the back half of their schedule because, as we know, is jam-packed. 12 games in 10 weeks. Check out their Facebook page and Instagram at Totally Buffalo Store or their website at totallybuffalostore.com. I am telling you right now, they have the best selection out there for Bandits fans. If you're not a Bandits fan, guess what? You can jump on the Bandits bandwagon, but they also have Bills apparel, they have Sabres apparel, they have apparel for all things Buffalo, like we mentioned. That's their motto. That's what they strive to do. Check the Totally Buffalo Store out because you will not be let down whatsoever again. Their Facebook, Instagram, Totally Buffalo, and their website, totallybuffalostore.com. We'll go over our final segment of this show. It's about the midway section of the NLL season, Phil. Might not feel like it because the Bandits have only played 1/3 of their season, but the NLL season is pretty much halfway over. Dorchester, in fact, has played 10 games, so their season is more than halfway over. So we thought early award race contenders. Some of these were easier than others. Some of them were like, oh man, there's only 3 easy choices here. And since the NLL picks 3, we're picking 3 of our own. MVP is the starter. For me, I got Dane Smith, I got Zach Higgins, and I got Aiden Walsh for my early, midway through the season MVP races. I think with Dane Smith, if you take him out of this offense, and a lot of people could say, hey, maybe it's Josh Byrne, he's the defending MVP. For me, I agree. It's tough to pick between the two for me, and again, this is no shot at either one of them. If Josh Byrne is out of the lineup, the offense is going to get hurt. But if Dane Smith's out of the lineup, the whole offense completely changes because of the playmaking ability he has. Zach Higgins, yes, the team's only 4-4, but he's having a career year. They brought him over for a reason. If the goal scoring at Ottawa ever picks up, this could be a legit threat to the Buffalo Bandits for a title. And then Aiden Walsh, I've mentioned him multiple times, putting CBD in the back mirror, or CDB in the back mirror. All the rumors of him coming to Vancouver washed out. He's number 1 in goals against average, 9.15, and number 2 at 80 save percentage. The kid is just unbelievable, and this is his first full season in the cage.
Yeah, he is, 24?
23 or 24,
23, yeah. Somewhere in there. Very, very young. Higgins, Vince, a little bit older. But all really good goalies. I originally had Byrne instead of Higgins because my issue was honestly very similar to my issue with Byrne and Smith, but Higgins and Walsh have pretty much identical stats across the board, so it was going to be hard for me to choose between them, but Dane Smith. The difference between Smith and Byrne as far as MVP goes is one's putting a lot more goals in and one is putting a lot more assists in, while Byrne has a lot of assists. He has a lot more goals than Smith and vice versa. But I think those two, it's really, really tough to have an MVP. But I do agree with you. We were talking a little bit about it, that Byrne has been out of the lineup before. We've seen it without him. We don't like to see it without him. The team as a whole, obviously, is much, much better with him in the lineup. But Smith was able to put the team on his back, score more goals, carry the team. They were sometimes low-scoring, gritty games, but oftentimes we saw him with the ball in his stick at the end of the game, scoring that game winner with, just a couple minutes, couple seconds left. And I don't know if Byrne would be able to have the same effect without Smith. And I hope we never have to find out, but it'd be an interesting experiment to see what kind of impact Byrne would have on his own without Smith. Not saying that he wouldn't still be an amazing player. Obviously, he would be, but does he have the same impact on the team that Smith does? Higgins and Walsh, obviously, it's very easy to pick a goalie in general for an MVP. It's very similar to the QB of football. Obviously, there's one of them, and they are a very, very big deal to the team. So both of them having amazing starts to their season, I think both of them, I feel bad for them. They don't deserve to be 4-4. I think both teams could be up there with the Bandits if they had any sort of offense whatsoever, but they don't. So they're stuck at 4-4 with incredible stats to back themselves up. But really, really very strong starts. You called Higgins. You've been a big fan of his for a long time. I don't think anyone saw this from Walsh coming at all. So I think he's the bigger surprise and kind of more flashy, exciting pick. But Higgins is also a surprise. Yes, he had a ton of saves last year, but his goals against and save percentage were a little bit on the, goals against higher, save percentage lower, but that's because the team around him wasn't great. So to see him stepping in and stepping up the way he is really impressive.
So we got 6 more awards. We'll try to pick up the pace
little
bit because a lot of these ones we do agree on. Offensive Player of the Year, I think this is one of the only ones that we're really going to have a differ. I got Mitch Jones, I got Josh Byrne, and I got Connor Kelly. Now, a lot of people are saying, why are these offensive players here and not their name for MVP? And I think a lot of this is due to what they're doing offensively. And Mitch Jones, I mean, 65 points through 8 games right now, 51 loose balls, 1 cost turnover, but he's only shooting 70 shots. And to me, that was the difference between him and Rezateris, because they're very similar in stats, but Rezateris has, I believe, 31 more shots. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now, 31 more shots with just 1 more point, same amount of goals. So Mitch Jones has a better shooting percentage there. I got Josh Byrne there just because of his goal scoring. I mean, 21 goals on 61 shots is unbelievable. You got 34 assists to dish that out. And then Connor Kelly right now is leading the league in goals with 24. He's got 24 assists, 48 points. So he might be a step below those two. But Colorado is not where they are without the goal scoring ability from Connor Kelly. And you've seen, I believe they're 1-2 in their last 3 games. Connor Kelly has not been scoring as much those last 3 games, and that might also be a reason why, they're sitting right now at 5-4, because Connor Kelly's kind of been a little bit more quiet. I think that's why he's so important to this team. I think that hurts him a little bit in the Offensive Player of the Year. If he gets back to what he was in the beginning of the season, I think he can pick up the pace and kind of close the gap between those two. But I also mentioned, Ryan Lanchbury's having a great season and Connor Fields as well. But they're putting a vast amount of numbers, which is great, but their team record is hurting them, to me.
And also, the other one I picked was Gattoni. I think he's having a really strong start. It's very easy to pick players from Philly and Buffalo because both of their offenses are through the roof, so their stats are also through the roof. Gattoni was the one I kind of chose, similar to you with Mitch Jones, because of that shooting percentage up to 35.8. It's one of the higher ones in the league. And then the other player to kind of keep an eye on for the future is for a similar reason, but the assists aren't there. He's not that kind of player, which is why I picked Gattoni over him. I think Gattoni's a more well-built player, but also the team that Brian Cole is the other one I was going to bring up.
Yep.
42.1% shooting percentage. That is insane on a team that does not score very much. So I think that is going to hurt him quite a bit. Georgia's just not a prolific offense unless they really turn it on and figure something out in the second half. But if he and the team do pick it up, he could have a monster second half of that season and really keep his stats going. But Gattoni has the assist to go with his very high 19 goals and the 35.2 shooting percentage. But like I was going to say, Connor Fields, like you said, has a lot of points, but he has a 14.7 shooting percentage. That is really bad. Just not good. Not good, and not really Offensive Player of the Year worthy on that.
Yeah, he picked it up a little bit of late, but early in the season, he was just, there was something up. We talked about it. We couldn't figure out what it was. Maybe it was just facing Buffalo twice. But we'll move on. The next 2 awards here, we have the exact same nominees for this.
Boring, I'm sorry.
I guess contenders, I should say. Defensive Player of the Year, I think there's a tier 1 and there's a tier 2. And then it's everybody else. I think in tier 1, it's Robert Hope and it's Mitch Stewart. I think they're running away with it right now based on their stats. Number 3 is in a tier of his own, and it's Matt Hossack. And I thought this was a great dispersal pick by Saskatchewan because I think it was a needed piece for their defensive end. He's leading it. He's leading in caused turnovers with 23. He's 15th with loose balls. But to me, it's either Robert Hope or Mitch Desnew. Robert Hope's coming in with first in loose balls. He's 6th in caused turnovers. He's 3rd in block shots. With Mitch Desnew, he was one of the sole healthy bodies or participating bodies with Toronto through that stretch. 5th in loose balls, 12th in caused turnovers, 2nd block shots. So the numbers are there for all of these 3 guys. I want to toss out Warren Jeffrey's name just because he's also up there. But I think it's a 3-horse race. Really, it's a 2-horse race, but I think it's a 3-horse race for the nominees and the contenders for the Defensive Player of the Year midway through the season.
Yeah, it really depends on what stat you like the most, essentially. I mean, Matt Hossack clearly has the caused turnovers over the other 2 by far. He's leading the league by quite a bit. I mean, he's in the lead by 5, which is a lot when it comes to caused turnovers. I mean, when you're leading everybody else by 5 and your max is 23, it kind of shows you how much farther ahead he is than everybody else. So it depends on, to me, out of sticky stats, what stat do you like the most? Do you think caused turnovers had the biggest impact, or do you think block shots and a healthy mix of caused turnovers is better? Plus, like you said, the loose balls are obviously higher for Hope and Desnew as well. So it depends on how much you weight caused turnovers alone because Hozek's still doing well with the other two. Like you said, 15th and 16th for loose balls and block shots. That's definitely not bad by any means, but he's not up there in the top 5 in either of those categories. But he is doing really, really well in cause turnovers. So I do think all three right now are worthy of it and should be a interesting race to the end.
Yeah, it's a clear. That one was one of the easiest. This one was the easiest. It's goaltender of the year. It's 3 to me. There's 5 guys on my list, but I have a clear top 3. It's Matt Vince, it's Zach Higgins, and it's Aiden Walsh. I was trying to find a way not to include Higgins and Aiden Walsh because I got them for MVP, but it's just so difficult not to because that's your top 3 in goals against average. That's your top 3 in save percentage. I also tossed out Dylan Ward and Frank Scigliano. Frank Scigliano took a little bit of a hit because of what Thomas Kozak's doing in net, but Dylan Ward just had 57 save performance. But yeah, it really comes down to Matt Vince, Zach Higgins, and Aiden Walsh. To me, I think I would lean Aiden Walsh for this award. I'm not just basing it on, Matt Vince is 6-0, but Aiden Walsh is 4-4, Zach Higgins is 4-4. It's the numbers that back it up. And what would Vancouver look like without Aiden Walsh? What would Ottawa look like without Zach Higgins? You can ask the same thing with Matt Vince, but Matt Vince is getting 16 goals a game in goal support. Zach Higgins is getting less than 6, and I think Aiden Walsh is getting less than 10. So, I'm sorry, less than 9 goals for Higgins, less than 10 for Walsh.
Less than 6.
Yeah,
I knew they were bad.
They've been averaging less than 6 the last few weeks. So
that is very true.
We'll throw that in there. But yeah, to me, it's right now it's a 3-horse race between those 3.
Yeah. Again, it's boring when we agree, but I do agree. I think Dylan Ward is coming on strong. I think he's having
Somebody
very
else
good.
step up if you don't want us to be boring.
I think the big thing with Ward is he's having a very big rebound season from what he did the last couple. He was kind of on the wrong end of what he's been doing. So it is like right now, if there was a comeback player of the year, I think he would be up there for it with how he performed the last 2 seasons. So good to see him bounce back for Colorado. We don't love Colorado, but as far as NLL analysts go, he is doing a good job. Higgins and Walsh, like you said, I think as much as Matt Vince means to this team, because you and I both agree he is insanely important, and what would this team be without him? I don't know, honestly. But it is right, and we don't want to know. It would be tough right now, though, with the amount of goals that the Bandits are putting up. It's very difficult to say, he is the reason they're winning. Yes, he's making really big saves. Yes, they've had really great games and held teams to extremely low numbers, but when an offense is averaging, 14 plus 15, 16 goals a game, it's tough to need to rely on your goalie as much as Higgins and Walsh are being relied on to carry their teams. And like I said earlier, both should have better records if their offenses in front of them were anything at all.
Yeah, that's a very well way to put it. We'll move on. Rookie of the year here. I think we differ on one name here. I think we both have Brendan O'Neill. I think that's clear and obvious. I think he's been one of the best rookies of this class. I got Will Johansson. You also have Will Johansson. I think his transition game for Albany, whether you're sitting in 2-7, so that does not help. But Will Johansson has played very well after missing his entire quote-unquote rookie season, but he's a rookie this year. And then I got Adam Patra. I think his two-way game has developed greatly. 50 loose balls, 9 caused turnover, 1 block shot on 39 shots. He's 10, 8, and 18. And that looks like 4th in the league for rookies in scoring, and he's playing a two-way transition role. So I got Adam Patra as my 3rd. Throw out Brock Haley, throw out Jake Jackson Webster playing in Las Vegas. Brian Cameron is filling in and playing one of the best lefty roles that Toronto has because Corey Small and Dan Craig aren't really doing anything. And then Jonathan Peshko, he's been very quiet in Vancouver, but I think as the season progresses, he's going to step up even more. But O'Neill, Johansson, and Patra are my picks for Rookie of the Year so far.
The other one, there's 2 other ones I'm going to mention. One, I'll throw out there as a bonus, Jake Nasso, however you say it, face-off guy, having a really, really good rookie face-off season.
Jake Withers look silly there, Phil.
He did.
Whole league's looking Jake Withers looks silly this year.
Good. He's up there at 60.4% for his face-offs for a rookie. That's really impressive. The other one I was going to mention is Dyson Williams.
Yep, I left that one for you.
One of my 3, and I noticed that you did leave him off for me. So it's not that PK doesn't agree. He is up there on PK's list. But the more interesting thing with him to me, in his last 3 games, he's had 5 points, 6 points, 4 points. And in Brendan O'Neill's last 3 games, he's had 2, 3, and 2. Before that, he had 3 points. So it seems like O'Neill kind of took the league by storm and started really hot, and now he's started to cool off as the league's got a little bit of tape on him and starting to figure out his go-tos, and whereas Dyson started a little bit slower, as did Albany, and now Dyson's starting to pick it up as he's getting more comfortable with the speed and pace of the NLL. I feel like O'Neill was kind of that unicorn that they talk about. Like, no one really knew what to do with him when he first came in. Like, what's he going to look like? Not a lot of film on him as far as his box game. I think he just really took off, and now teams are slowly starting to figure out a little bit of how to play him, whereas Dyson's kind of just catching up to the NLL speed as Albany is trying to be a better team as well. But I think as of right now, their last few games have been flipped to me, so I had him sneak into my top 3.
Dang it, Phil. You're convincing me. Probably should switch up my flip here, but I can't. Pat already made the graphic, so tough peanuts for me. We'll move on. 2 more awards here. Transition Player of the Year. I picked Matt Gilray to win that, and newsflash and a little sneak peek, he's not on here for me. We both have Owen Grant. I think to me, he's the clear-cut number 1 right now, the favorite in the clubhouse. 15 points. He's 17th in loose balls, 6th in caused turnovers, 1st in block shots among transition players. We both have Jake Boudreau, a quieter name because he plays way out west for us. 13 points, 72 loose balls, which is third with caused turnovers, and 12th in block shots, all with transition players. The differing part here is my third name, and it's a name that I wanted Buffalo to try to acquire in the offseason. I can see why Rochester kept him, is Taylor Jensen. Half brother of Josh Byrne. Having a great season in his second season, 6 points, but he's got 66 loose balls, which is 7th in transition, 13 caused turnovers, which is 3rd, and 8 block shots, which is 7th. So he's very spaced out. I think we already said there's a clear cut number 1 in Owen Grant, but I think Jake Boudreau and Taylor Jensen are right on his heels, along with the next player you're going to name.
My other one, who was also on PK's list, but he's leaving for me again, Zach Currier.
Yep.
One of my favorite players of all time.
That's why I didn't touch him.
I figured. He also has 16 points, 5 goals, 11 assists, 83 loose balls. The big thing with him is his caused turnovers up at 18, number 2 in the league. So to me, I know what Owen Grant is doing is great. His block shots are crazy, but again, it depends on how much weight you put into loose balls, caused turnovers. They're a little bit different, but I think personally it's a 2-horse race between Grant and Currier with how Currier's settling in. But at the same time, Currier, I believe, started the season as offense, so it's tough to say how much his transition points are because of that. And now I think they've shifted him back to the back door a little bit. So it's I don't know. He's tough to look at. I mean, it's similar to Ian McKay. Like, his forward stats are
That's why
way
he's
better.
not on my transition list either.
Right. I don't think he's going to be considered a transition player this year, which is a bummer for McKay because now, not that individual awards matter, but he is now no longer like a good enough forward to be anywhere up that, and he's not seen as a transition, even though he's a really good transition player still. But he's up there with 23 points, 17 goals, which would blow everybody in this category away, but he's playing a lot of offense, so it's not fair. But similar to Currier and Grant, Currier started out the front door, so it's kind of hard to compare them dead on. But the caused turnovers to me are the big point of Currier compared to Grant. But like you said, the block shots for Grant are through the roof and really, really impressive for a player like that to be playing that style of defense. I think is really impressive to me as a transition player. Usually you're known for your speed, not necessarily your toughness and your size, but 14 block shots, getting in the way that often, being in that position to block shots is also an interesting point for Grant. So I think Grant's a little bit more of a true heavyweight transition player, and Courier's been a little bit more of an offensive transition player, but Grant brings the points with him as well. So both are really, really good and should be an interesting end. But Grant, like you said, I think around the league, Grant has ran away with it currently.
Yeah, and I think he's 4th on the team in scoring and 3rd on the team in goal scoring. So that also factors in.
That's last depressing for their team.
Yeah. Very. Last one, Coach of the Year. We both agree on all 3 of these names: John Tavares, Derek Keenan / Jimmy Quinlan, and Ian Brubel. big credit to Ian Rubel coming in, rookie head coach, and taking over Philly and making a giant run like that. Derek Keenan and Jimmy Quinlan, head coaches, really taking Saskatchewan and being that number 2 team in the league right now. And then obviously John Tavares, I don't think he's going to get enough credit. He's probably not going to win the award because it's Buffalo, and the head coach of Buffalo doesn't get a credit because of all the offense, but you still got to keep the offense together and the role players there. But yeah, I think all 3 of these guys are very deserving. I think there's a reason that we picked them all, not just because of where they are in the standings, but I mean, John Tavares' teams looks absolutely perfect. And then Saskatchewan and Philly are making runs that not everybody in the league expected. And that is a big case for you to win Coach of the Year.
Yeah, I think it's depressing that Johnny gets overlooked
all the time,
every single year, just because your team's really good and you have really good players. You still have to coach well. I don't know. It just, and this isn't even a Bandits thing. It's frustrating that usually the Coach of the Year in most sports does not go to the best team, and I feel like really good teams are punished for being really good, and that's why you aren't looked at as a Coach of the Year, even though your team was arguably the best in the entire league. But they like the coaches like you just mentioned, which fair, they should be on here. I'm not saying they shouldn't be on here, but I feel like the award often goes to teams that rise above where they should have been or where they were projected to be. If they were projected to not make playoffs, then all of a sudden they make playoffs, then a lot of that goes to the head coach and how great of a job they did with maybe less talent on the roster to be in the position they're at. But Johnny gets punished because his team's really good and his players are really good. Even GMs, like I feel like it's the same thing. Like they get punished for having great players that they got years ago that are now amazing that they just don't get any credit for because it's about the players you bring in that make an impact, and the Bandits didn't have to bring anybody in. But yeah, I think Johnny once again will be overlooked, and just frustrating that really good teams, they just look past you because your team's really good. That seems counterintuitive, but I do agree with your other 2/3 as well. Philly, I think, has been a bit of a surprise. Their defense needs to pick it up quite a bit to be, I think, seen as like a truly elite team in this league, but they're doing better than people expected, and same with the Rush, the only other 6-win team in the league. I think they were expected to be middle of the pack good, pushing for playoffs for sure, but not this dominant to start the season.
So that will wrap up this segment and this episode. Phil, is there anything else you want to bring up or talk about before we shut it down and get ready for Monday's episode?
Nope. No, I'm good.
Oh, that's very fair. Hopefully everybody enjoys their Super Bowl. Don't boycott it. Go watch it. It's the last football you're going to see of meaningful football. Yeah, eat the food. Eat the food and hate watch the Chiefs. That's the way to do it. But on our Monday episode, we will break down and go over the Sabres' last game before the 22nd. Maybe you can extend your winning streak to 5 and not let your star player get hit in the head and have no response. We'll go and hand out our Buffalo Bills BSC awards. Again, the most coveted award in sports and entertainment history. And then we'll go over what our playoff predictions for the NL look like from our bold predictions in the offseason, and we'll also go over our bold predictions for the NLL and Bandits that we had in the preseason. Look how dumb we look, or look how smart we look midway through the season, how they're looking so far. So that will wrap up this episode. Thank you all for listening to another episode of the Buffalo Sports Collective. Thank you to Tap That Tap Room, Totally Buffalo Store, and Phrase Flowers for sponsoring this episode and this podcast. Follow our channel, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Buffalo Sports Collective, and on X and Blue Sky at Buffalo Sports Co. Visit our website at buffalosportscollective.com. Phil's article came out on Tuesday. Mine came out on Thursday. Give them a read. Check out our story on our link tree on our socials, or at the shop tab at the top of the website. Follow our channel wherever you listen to podcasts, and make sure you leave us that glorious review on Apple and Spotify. Until next time, bye-bye.